I'd like to spend the next few minutes sharing our primary reading curriculum. We'll look at the reading components in grades kindergarten, first, and second, highlight a few grade level specifics, as well as share some ideas for you to help your child at home. As your child's first teacher, parents have the power to influence what's valued. By modeling a love for reading and by creating an environment where reading is valued, parents have that opportunity to pass the love of reading on to their children. Do you remember rocking your child to sleep at night with that favorite book nestled between you, you reading the words and your child turning the pages? Even though that child may have grown too big for your lap now, that doesn't mean the time spent reading together needs to end. Continue to cherish that time. Even after your child begins to read independently on their own, there's still huge benefits of reading together. Hearing books read by an expert reader builds fluency for children. It also exposes them to richer texts that they may not be able to access independently yet. Brown Bear was a favorite in our house, and my boys are far too big for lap sitting, but we still enjoy that family reading time. It's never too early and it's never too late. Our literacy vision in Barrington is that students will become active, skillful, and confident readers, writers, and communicators through purposeful literacy experiences with a comprehensive literacy program. Our literacy steering team literally spent over a year reviewing materials and researching best practices to choose the reading components that we currently have. All of our reading materials are aligned with Common Core state standards, and our materials are created and developed by some of the top educators in our field. And these are our reading components. If you look at this as a toolbox for our teachers to use the materials that fit the needs of their students. We first have our Lucy Calkins curricular calendars, and our Lucy Calkins curricular calendars are also tied to our Lucy Calkins writing materials. The reading curricular calendars help teachers launch and implement the Reader's Workshop. The units are organized in sequential order that model the teaching moves and language to teach students how to read with increasing sophistication as well as personal engagement. Our teachers and students find the Lucy Calkins materials extremely engaging and very rigorous. Along with our Lucy Calkins, we have our Making Meaning materials developed from the Developmental Studies Center. And what this is a program that offers fabulous mentor texts. So Making Meaning supports teachers in providing their students with the comprehension skills, but also combine that with the social emotional learning. In this environment, teachers create an atmosphere where students can learn to collaborate, they can agree and they can disagree respectfully, and take responsibility for their own learning as they listen to books and read their own books. Making Meaning is so nice because it gives teachers carefully selected fiction and nonfiction trade books that, as I said, are stellar mentor texts that they can use to teach these comprehension strategies. Some of the comprehension strategies that students in grades kindergarten, first and second are introduced to and taught are strategies such as retelling, using schema and making connections, visualizing as they read or listen to books, questioning and wondering, making inferences about what will happen next, determining important ideas in the text, understanding, especially in the nonfiction, but both fiction and nonfiction, understanding the text structure, as well as summarizing and synthesizing what they read. We also have Stephanie Harvey comprehension toolkits, as well as Linda Hoyt interactive read alouds. And these two items give teachers additional lessons for teaching those comprehension strategies. And then each grade level, we teach reading through our genre studies as well. And it's through the genre studies that students are able to think and talk and read text with a deeper understanding. And one valuable resource in our schools, and every school has one, is what we're calling the leveled library, or some schools call them their book rooms. And our book rooms provide teachers with resources that they need for small group instruction. Our book rooms has multiple copies of books where teachers can go and get books that target their students' reading level that they can use in guided reading groups. And then throughout the year, we use to assess and monitor where our students are reading. We use the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment. And as parents, I encourage you not to get too caught up on your child's letter level because each child is so different and they're always moving through the levels. But do use the levels as a guide for you as when you're picking out appropriate books for your child to read independently at home. So in our classrooms, we use the reading workshop model. And a reading workshop includes a structure similar to this. Our time starts with an anchor lesson or a mini lesson where a teacher might use a picture book or maybe just part of a picture book as a read aloud to model one of the strategies they'd like their students to focus on. So that's the I do part of the workshop. And then we move into the shared reading. And in kindergarten or first grade, second grade, this might look like a familiar poem written out on a chart or a sentence from a book written onto sentence strips where together we'll read it and focus on what the words are saying or the meaning of the sentence. And then from there, in our reading workshop, and the bulk of our time is spent independent reading, and this is also a time where teachers pull small groups to work on work either in guided reading groups where everyone is at the same level and they're moving through that level, or sometimes those small groups are more strategy groups. A strategy group looks different because each child may be reading at a different reading level, but the strategy that they're working on is the same. And especially as you get into second grade, those small group times may be like a literature circle or a book club study or inquiry circle. But that part of our workshop is the you do, where the students are working independently and they're working on these strategies on their own. So a few grade level highlights I'd like to share with you. First, in kindergarten. In kindergarten, we want to instill just that love and curiosity for reading and really build the confidence in our readers. And we do this through repeated readings. Some of the favorite books that are in the kindergarten reading bins are those books that they write themselves, either as class or the independent individual books they write. And they can repeatedly read them, and they're their favorites, and that really does build the confidence they have. In addition to just building that love for reading, we're using genre studies in kindergarten to teach reading. And kindergarten genre studies that we focus on are pattern books, or those folk tales that have those patterns, as well as the rhymes and riddles. And then every grade level has some type of poetry genre study. I pulled out a standard from the Common Core State Standards for kindergarten, and I want to show you how that progresses through the grades. But in kindergarten, one of the reading standards is, with prompting and support, compare and contrast the adventures and experiences of characters in a familiar story. So again, that's with prompting and support, looking at books that are familiar with them. They're comparing the characters in those books. When we move into first grade, we are continuing to build that confidence and excitement about reading. That's really when many kids start reading more books independently. And we support that independent reading with helping students find those just right books. And I will attach a document with this PowerPoint for additional tips for parents to help your child find those just right books for them. And then again, in first grade, we use our genre studies to teach our reading. And in first grade, the genre studies we really focus on are those realistic fiction books, fantasy books. In first grade, we're starting to really dig into those nonfiction books, looking at the nonfiction text structures, as well as poetry. And if you notice, the standard in first grade, that same standard from kindergarten, moves into first grade, and students are asked to compare and contrast the adventures and experience of characters and stories. So what's missing is we're starting to take that prompting and support away, and it could be any story that they're reading. It doesn't necessarily have to be a familiar story. So they're still doing the same thing a little bit more independently. Some second grade highlights. Second grade's exciting because if you have any second graders in your family or seen second grade readers, they're really starting to get into the beginning chapter books. And so the shift here in second grade then for children becomes being able to hold their thinking across chapters. Second grade is also, with those chapter books come series of chapter books. So that's so nice because if you fall in love with a character, when the book ends, you don't have to end your relationship with that character. You can go on to a new book in that series. The genre studies in second grade that we focus on are mystery. Mystery is a big genre study for second grade with Cam Jansen and Nate the Great, which again are also series. We also look at fables and fairy tales in second grade, really digging into the informational nonfiction texts, looking closer at the text features and noticing how a nonfiction text is set up, as well as poetry again. And as we move into second grade, that standard changes even more, where students need to compare and contrast two or more versions of the same story by different authors or from different cultures. So this works well in second grade with our genre studies of students are able to compare fairy tales in our genre study units. For example, the Little Red Riding Hood fairy tale, and then comparing it to a different culture's version of Little Red Riding Hood, like a book like Lon Po Po. So there's so many ways that parents can help support reading at home. And as we talked about in the beginning, it's just that valuing that time for reading, both independently and that time reading together, as well as modeling reading on your own, in your house, in your home. Visiting the library regularly, have a set time that you go each week to get new books from the library, as well as return your old. And just as we have our special times with our book clubs with our friends, consider creating a neighborhood book club with kids similar ages to your own children, where you choose a book together, read the book, and then come together either periodically throughout the book or one time at the end where you ask and talk about deep questions from the books, or things that you discovered as you read the books, and just that conversation with their peers is so valuable. And make it fun. Have a theme tied around your book club. Another thing to consider is not just reading books, but consider reading recipes together and cooking. Have your child read you the recipe as you get dinner prepared. Or even just telling stories together as a family. And those stories could later become stories that your child writes down, possibly makes into a book that they can read forever. I will also attach some additional ways you can help your child reading and support your child at home to this web cast. I want to close by sharing one last book with you, and it's a small poem put into a book by Rosemary Wells. It's called Read to Your Bunny. Read to your bunny often. It's 20 minutes of fun. It's 20 minutes of moonlight and 20 minutes of sun. 20 old favorite minutes. 20 minutes brand new. Read to your bunny often, and your bunny will read to you. We shouldn't teach great books. We should teach a love of reading.